All right, let's get started. So it looks like we're going to be opening gap down about 30 some odd points on SPX. I got a pivot drawn at 69.25. Pivot at 69.25. Let me see. I gotta adjust that. And that's primarily based on the breakdown by strike, the dealer positioning, breakdown by strike. And so far we bottomed off the 69.25 overnight. So I got that gap awareness. That's about 30 points up. The straddle is about 33 points. So it's pricing in a move. If we open here, it'll be about where the gap fill is, and 6,900 being the low of the day. That's just what the straddle is currently pricing in. Let me just get situated here. Not sure what to expect for gap open here, but I'm expecting to some degree some range, a good decent range. Hopefully 6,900 being the potential low. The gamma chart. Generally looks pretty supportive for the most part. Seeing that we're in positive gamma, that is. Let me figure out what's happening here. Trading panel's all messed up. All right, so I'm primarily trading prop firms. I got a few valuations that I'm working on, and I got also a funded account, so we'll see how that goes. Looks like the market opened at about 69.33-ish. And we're moving up towards the gap fill. One thing I like to pay attention to is the middle of the gap. And I think that's around 69.50. Just to see what we end up doing around there. YM seems to be on a rocket right now while NQ's doing the opposite. So guess what we're seeing is dispersion. Okay, so YM took the overnight highs and now we're starting to spool down a little. So let's see how it goes here. Kind of favored downside, but now that the overnight low has been taken, we'll kind of see what the market presents us here. So we're hitting that 69.25 pivot area, which is the overnight low. That's the largest dealer positive gamma in this range here. Overnight sweep looks decent there, and then we pumped right back up. Would have been a decent trade for this 10 points. That's typically a trade I want to play, but trying out this streaming thing for the first time. So my mind seems to be all over the place. So let's see where we end up here. Really like that overnight sweep. Kicking myself a little for not taking it, but $69.25 was the pivot that I had, and we bounced right off of it. Beautiful. Just leaving me behind. Yeah, the risk is way too large to chase this long. VIX climbed a little bit higher, only to sweep and come back down. Gold's still on a rocket, though intraday, I guess it's closer to the lower end of its range here. We're rejecting off of VWAP on both ES and NQ. And right back up to 69.40 on SPX. $69.40 on an SPX. What are we showing there? I may try secondary long here. If we can pull back enough. Just watching the volume footprint for the 5-minute candle. I want to see this thing chase right back down to 69.65 for a low risk entry for me. I think right now if we entered, it's about a 10-point risk. This might be it though. Let's see here. Just gonna stay quite a bit patient here. Wish I had a better entry there. If I set my entry at 65, would have been perfect. I want to take this to about 69.50, but let me take a quick look here. It's going to be some resistance at 40. I think that resistance might have already worked itself out, but you can see I'm in long, but the confidence I have in this trade is not that great. I don't love trading at around this time. But I'll give it to its lows. And it's very possible we continue spooling down here. Yep, I thought so. VIX is moving up, so yeah, I'm expecting this to run down now. It's going to hit my stop. Trigger my stop. And we'll see. It's always like that morning throwaway whenever I take a trade at around this time. This generally tends to happen. Yep. SL is taken. Now if I got the entry that I wanted at 69.65, I would have been able to save about 4 to 5 points on that play on a risk level perspective, from a risk perspective. And let's see this thing kind of spool down. I can see this running down towards 6,900. VIX is climbing 17.56 right now. I really don't want to play a breakout play though. Especially when I had a potential VWAP entry. Had my bias been a little bit lower. YM took the overnight highs and it's right back down to the low, closer to the low a day. It's incredible. So here's probably a mini pop here because NQ grabbed some liquidity there. We have Thursdays, Fridays, and Mondays lows on NQ that we can spool down and just collect some liquidity if it needed it. Should we turn back up, that is. But today looks like it's pretty grim here. See this run. Oh boy. Hopefully it doesn't bounce there. I would have loved to see 69.50 get hit before we start running and spooling upwards. Or retracing at least. That was about 69.15. VIX is still generally up, so looks like a slight retracement here, but we'll see how it goes. I typically like to enter off of high volume candles, whether it be, well, my favorite ones are shooting stars and hammer candles. Also dojis work too. Back at 25 here, and if I want a short, this is where I would do it, right? But the risk is just too large for me. Oops. Let me see here, VIX. Huh, just shy. VIX is just shy of a level that I wanted to see it hit at 17.68. The gap makes me biased upwards. Yes, the gap definitely makes me bias a little bit upwards, but this could run down and hit another target. I kind of like that we're here hovering around 25, which was my initial pivot here. I'm tempted to take this bad boy short. I think I'm just gonna give it a shot and run it to 69.50. 69.50 is it? Let's see how that goes there. Not in love with it, but I figured I'd give it a shot for the sake of the stream. Just kicking things off with my evaluation at first, just because I didn't get used to trading while live streaming. It's quite the psychological burden. And the reason why I kind of favored 69.25 as a pivot is because it's the largest dealer long strike. In the area near our open. And it looked like we kind of settled underneath it while retesting it. So my short was really based off of the retest of that 69.25 level. Preferably, I would have wanted 69.30. Off the negative strike, negative dealer strike, which is the negative gamma strike. And then for it to run down. What I don't like about this trade is that we swept some key levels already. And typically I would go long off these levels. This is a pretty ugly entry, I have to admit myself. And NQ's already spooled down. YM took its low a day, overnight low. YM is about to spike again above that 1766 level, 68 level, sorry. Towards 18. Not in love with this low divergence here between NQ and ES, and if this divergence holds, I have to close. Typically, it would be a long entry for me. Yep. Assuming that the divergence holds. Would have loved to see 6,900 on this trade. 6,900 is the straddle low that I had marked out from the opening. So the opening was around 69.33, and I just subtract the straddle. The at the money straddle, so which was measured at about 33 points. Which pretty much puts us at 6,900 for a measured move based on what IV, based on what implied volatility is pricing in. And then to the upside, about 33 plus 69.33 plus 33, and that takes us to 69.66, which would imply a gap fill is priced in. Vol is relatively, I mean, implied volatility is relatively high. Especially because the straddle has been measured earlier this week at about 22 to 25 on average at open. Anyways, we'll see how this goes. I gotta give this some time to bake. There's a lot of fight here. Yeah, so risk management is everything. And right now, my risk is pretty poor, though I may come out on top. Waiting for that VIX pop. VIX is popping here. Defensives. It's definitely higher than cyclicals. Taking it off there. Not gonna push my luck. Almost back to break even for the day. Yeah, so 69.50 would have hit real nice had I been a little bit more patient. But again, first time streaming, so psychologically I gotta get more numb. But looking at NQ, it basically swept all the levels that I wanted to sweep. So this is going to be interesting here. And we got a nice spike to 18 VIX, which is the other level that I was watching for. And we're close to 6,900. I am really close to taking a long here. Really, really close to taking a long. Existing home sales. Existing home sales is up. Interesting. All right. This is going to be beautiful, hopefully. Give me a decent entry. 6,900 would be perfect for an entry. All right, watching this candle form here. This is looking pretty here. I am very tempted to go long here. Extremely tempted to go long. Watching it close. It's not going to be a pretty entry after this wick. Low of 38. All right, let's see if we can come down a little bit lower. This could spool down. So shorting at 69.25 was kind of perfect. However, if I took multiple positions, I would have been able to take some off and then ride it through to this 69.40 level, which is, I guess, a swing low. So a liquidity spot from the previous Thursday. Oof. I think I'm going to try it. It's relatively low risk. I'm just going to take this scalp right back up to 69.15. Let me take a look at the dealer positioning. I don't think it's gonna work out this time, but we got the hammer candle with a higher volume, which is the 10 a.m. candle. So here you can see the volume spike off a liquidity level from Thursday. And Q also hit some levels on the way down too. And it's a hammer candle. What more can I want? So I had to go in. In theory, I should probably let this run right back towards VWAP, which happens to be where the POC is from a volume profile perspective. But I'm just going to take this scalp here because there's a chance that it may come right back down. The beauty is that VIX also hit 18, which happens to be a high from December 17th. So I was watching that level. Once we hit, it was a decent opportunity for a long. I mean, I didn't want to knife catch it, which is the problem. Why I didn't get such a great entry. But as a result, I end up sitting with a little bit more drawdown and or risks in my trade. So we hit 69.12, didn't hit 69.15 like I was hoping for. Hit the 5-minute fair value gap there, and we got a pullback. Just gonna hang on to this and see where this brings us. The risk is not terribly large. I mean, we're looking at 6 points. Just over 6 points. And that spike was off the 10 a.m. news too, which I think is housing sales. The news doesn't matter too much to me. I just need to know that there's news. I am worried that we're going to run down a little bit further, but I think the risk reward here was reasonable based off of a play that I typically play a good 75% of the time. So here comes that run to 69.15. Wow. And it still didn't go. Hopefully get some love from NQ. NQ is kind of dragging it while YM is carrying ES right now on this pullback up. VIX is kind of pulling back a little. So let's see how it acts around here. YM's pulling back off the 5-minute 80 EMA tap. Technically the 1580 EMA tap too. So I'm just watching this win for NQ. They kind of spool upwards. Boom. Oh boy, look at that. All right, so that hit nicely. Left quite a bit on the table there. But I wasn't too greedy, I guess. But we're up on the day by about like 8 points or so. In theory, this should take us right back to VWAP. And VIX is spooling down now after its 18 tap. That was beautiful. That was a very high probability play on my end. Let's see. I think there's news on the tariffs today too. Court doesn't rule on Trump's tariffs on Wednesday, which likely was that vol drop. So it's funny how price action just kind of runs right down liquidity, and now we're right back up at 69.25, which is my original pivot for the day. In theory, this thing should start running upwards. I think we probably hit the low for today. Yeah, that's much better. So bottomed out at 69.02 SPX and then ran towards 69.30 so far SPX. VIX is dropping like a rock. With that being said, we're on the upside of that 69.25 now. So we tapped off VWAP. Anything can happen here. But vol's dropping really hard off that tariff news. Yep, right back to POC. Maybe I should have been a little bit more greedy on that one. But this, in theory, this should run us right back up to the gap though. right. I would like to see this run up towards the gap. First barrier I see is 69.35, which is a dealer short strike, large dealer short strike relative to today anyways. Yeah, if you look at the options depth dashboard on the top right corner there, guess what I'm trying to show us here is that 69.25 is that large dealer long strike, where it kind of acts as gravity to some degree. And from there all the way down to about 69.05 is this, all this a pretty decent cluster of dealer long strikes, which the price action tends to hover in between these clusters. So we got a this morning we opened up 33. So this morning we opened up 33. So we opened up here. We rode right up to 69, I believe 69.40. Now 69.40, it was an obvious level in the intraday dealer strike breakdown. But over here is less obvious, but we got that rejection. It also happens to be a swing low from yesterday on SPX. Tested that swing low, run down towards, run back down to 69.25 and run through it, comes right back up to retest 69.25 here, which I believe is the 945 candle on ES. And then we spooled down and ran right towards 69.05 to 6900 and just didn't want to get into that 6900 level, which is the dealer negative strike, which is outside of that cluster. And from there we longed, took it to 69.15, giving it a reasonable take profit because that cluster kind of ends conservatively at 69.15. And if it wanted to spool back down, it can spool back down should the tariff news have been bad. But after grabbing all that liquidity, we ran up and through 69.15 right back to 69.25, and I think we're back at around 30 now, testing that level. Now intraday, it's a completely different story. We have a cluster at 69.35 to 69.50, and it's a dealer negative strike cluster. Should we make our way through there, we could see 69.50. I was pretty conservative with my targets. In theory, if I had two position, I would have held a bit longer for the runner. And I definitely would have taken it off by 69.30, 69.35 based on the breakdown by strike. Just shy of POC here at 69.73 on ES. Kind of shifting back and forth between SPX and ES because options depth, the options are the ODT options that I'm watching are on SPX, and they basically drive the dealer hedging. The straddle finally dropped. At 10, it was sitting around 35, and then it dropped to 26 now. Straddle's quite a bit lower. You've seen VIX retrace some of that move down. I would have a hard time going long though after that beautiful entry. I still look at the 15-minute candle. Definitely like a long, but I need something to speak to me. Otherwise, I can't enter. Hopefully some sort of formation. If we retest the inverted fair value gap, that'd be great. A little bit of ICT for you. All right, so let's see if this thing comes back down to retest that inverted fair value gap. In theory, we had already retested POC, so this secondary long is not going to be a high probability long, especially with the size of the risks. And the size of the risk would have to be at 39.80 or 39.38 on yes. All right, let's see how we act here off the inverted fair value gap on the 5-minute. Inverted fair value gap is basically right here. Play the bounce only. Quick 10-minute hold. Loving it. Search for next opportunity. Nice. Very similar. All right, so it seems that volatility is really kicking right back up here. This is interesting because I think it's a retest. I don't think volatility, VIX is likely to kick up much higher. You know what? That's central. All right, I think that's kind of want to call it here after a decent trade. But maybe I'll just hold off a little, see what happens. My be right back signal on. have to say my pivot's a bit funky today. The 69.25, it might have worked for me to take a trade off of, but it seems to me the real pivot was 69.35, maybe 69.40. Now let's see what happens if vol does not pump above that 18 level and ES goes down for a lower low. It's very decent divergence there to play a potential long. Let's see what we do here. Not in love with this. Would love to see a low test on ES and then NQ hold for a decent divergence. Then we have a fixed divergence too on the 5-minute. That'll be perfect. So I'll be watching. All right, nothing's happening here. Can see a spool down potentially, just to cause that lower divergence. And if it does, I may consider a long, but I don't really want to wait out on stream here for that. So I'm just going to call it here for first stream. Let's go.